"You don't have to forgive me, but you deserve the truth." That was the first line, and I read it out loud to no one. The room didn't answer. The lamp buzzed quietly in the corner. The smell of burnt coffee lingered from the morning, and my laptop screen, bright, harsh, stared back at me like a face I didn't recognize anymore. She used to sign her emails with "Love Always L." This one had no name, just that single horrible line and an attachment, a PDF. I didn't know people still sent those for personal things. I thought PDFs were for invoices, resumes, permission slips, not for rewriting the final chapter of a marriage. I clicked download. The progress bar crept like blood from a paper cut. All I could hear was the ticking. My grandfather's old wall clock hanging above the bookshelf where the wedding photos used to sit. Now it's just stacked mail, bills, a ceramic bird I don't remember buying, and one yellow envelope addressed to someone named Silas Reed in a handwriting that isn't mine. I never opened it. I'm not Silas Reed, but I didn't send it back. Anyway, the email, it came exactly 1 year to the day after she left. Not divorced, left. Her clothes vanished from the closet. The cat's carrier was gone. 2 toothbrushes down to 1. And a voicemail from her mother saying, "It's better this way." I wasn't even mad that she cheated. I was mad she never explained why. And now she wants to talk. Now she wants me to open a document titled "For When You're Ready." Who says I'm ready? Here's what I did instead. I poured the coffee I never finished that morning. Cold, bitter, still better than her lies. I sat in the chair she used to fall asleep in while watching bad documentaries, and I opened that PDF. 10 pages. No greeting, no date, just a line at the top of page 1. If you're reading this, it means I finally found the nerve. I got to page 3 before my hands started shaking. By page 5, I stood up. By page 7, I was outside, barefoot, pacing in the rain. By page 9, I was laughing. And by page 10, let's just say I knew exactly who Silas Reed was. And I knew why she never wanted me to find out. I didn't finish reading the PDF in one sitting. I couldn't. After page 5, I left my apartment and just started walking. I don't remember locking the door. I didn't even bring a jacket. The October wind felt like needles across my skin, but I welcomed it. Pain at that point felt more honest than anything she had ever told me. Back home after midnight, I stared at the screen again. That cursed file still open. Page 6 waiting for me like an executioner holding the next blade. It began with a confession, not the one I expected. She didn't start by apologizing for the affair. In fact, she barely mentioned him. Instead, she detailed something else, something older, something that predated the cheating. "You were never supposed to see what was in the red box." Those words sent a chill through me. I can't explain. There was a red box, a small one, wood locked. It sat on the top shelf of our closet the entire time we were married. I always assumed it was filled with letters or jewelry or whatever women kept locked away. I never questioned it. Lena said it belonged to her mother. Out of respect, I never touched it, never asked again until now. She said in the letter that the red box was hers. Yes, but it didn't contain anything sentimental, not jewelry, not keepsakes. It held documents, receipts, notes, and a photograph she never meant for anyone to see, especially not me. That's when she started talking about Silas Reed. I had to sit down because I knew that name. Not from my life, not from real-world connections, but from a voicemail I'd accidentally overheard a few months before the marriage collapsed. A voice I didn't recognize said, "We need to stop. He's asking questions." I thought it was spam. I deleted it. I was wrong. According to her letter, Silas wasn't some random man she met during the affair. No, he was a man she had known before me, before us, before everything. She described him as a chapter that never closed. They'd been engaged years ago. She broke it off. Or at least that's what she told me. But she admitted something in the PDF I'll never unsee now. They never really ended. Even after she married me, Silas was still present. Not physically at first, but in messages, then visits, then shared hotels. Not just during our bad months, but always. Even in the months I thought we were solid. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was sustained, built, hidden behind every kiss she gave me goodnight, every anniversary dinner, every I love you. She lived a double life, and I was the cover story. I scrolled to page 8, and there it was, the photo. It was a grainy scan of a printed picture, probably taken on an old digital camera, but I recognized the background instantly. Our wedding venue, that old garden in Posaka with the ivy on the stone walls. Only it wasn't me standing next to her in the photo. It was Silas, and the timestamp on the image. 2 weeks after our honeymoon, my vision blurred. I don't even remember reading page 9. I must have blacked out or gone numb or whatever people do when their heart forgets how to beat. When I came to, I was sitting on the floor, my laptop still open, the screen dimmed. The cat was scratching at the window, wanting to come in. Only we didn't have a cat anymore, not since she took him, so I was alone. Again, the final page didn't start like the others. There was no slow build-up, no thoughtful wording, no manipulative softness, just a single sentence in bold. I need your help. I didn't breathe for a full minute after reading that. Help? After everything? After living in my home like a devoted wife while planning her exit with another man? After admitting she lied repeatedly for 5 years? Every holiday, every embrace, every time I made her coffee just the way she liked it, with almond milk and cinnamon on top? She wanted my help? I almost shut the laptop right then. But of course, I didn't. I'm not built like that. I've never been good at walking away from pain. I read every word. She said she was afraid. Not of me, not of what I might do with the truth. No, Lena was afraid of Silas, the man she once called her safe place, the man she ran to after she gutted our marriage, the man she used to replace the only life I had spent years building with her. She was terrified of him. She said he changed after they moved in together, became possessive, secretive. He took her phone for days at a time, monitored her location, controlled who she spoke to, where she went, what she wore. She said there were moments when he would stand completely still in the dark and just watch her sleep. Not lovingly, not sweetly, like he was studying her, like she was a puzzle he hadn't solved yet. She wrote that Silas had a switch inside him, and when it flipped, she felt like she was standing next to something empty, something dangerous, something that once pretended to love her, but no longer had to. At first, I didn't believe it. Part of me still doesn't. It felt like another manipulation, like she was trying to make herself the victim again. But there was something different in her voice this time. Not regret, not guilt, desperation. She said he'd started mentioning my name in their arguments, that he'd accused her of never really letting go of me, of keeping secrets even now. And she had. God knows she had. But what really caught me off guard was when she said, "He thinks I still love you." I stopped reading right there for a moment. Not because I believed it, not because I felt anything close to hope, but because those words cracked open something I had boarded up, a memory. It was a Thursday, late summer, maybe a year before the truth came out. We were sitting on the fire escape outside our apartment, drinking cheap wine from coffee mugs. She looked at me with this strange expression, like she was memorizing me, and said, "Sometimes I think you're the only person who actually sees me." At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now, I wonder if it was a warning. Back to the letter, she said Silas had started losing time. She'd find him sitting in the car in the driveway hours after he'd come home. Once, she woke up and found him standing at the foot of the bed, just staring. When she asked what he was doing, he said, "Checking to see if you're still here." But the worst part, she believed he had found the red box. Not opened it, but found it. She said it had been moved. Not by her, not by accident. Slightly shifted, like someone had picked it up and put it back. She was sure Silas knew about me, about the letters she wrote but never sent, about the old saved voicemails. She said she started seeing signs, an email draft on her computer, never written by her, addressed to my inbox, just one word typed in it. "Run," she ended the letter with a plea. "If anything happens to me, don't go to the police. Go to the cabin." I didn't know what cabin she meant, not until I remembered something from years ago, something stupid, something we joked about when we were still pretending to be in love. A tiny lakeside rental we stayed at during our second anniversary. No electricity, no cell signal, just trees, water, and her humming off-key while I made burnt pancakes. We called it Our World Without Walls. She had written that phrase in the PDF footer, small, almost hidden, Our World Without Walls. That's when I knew this wasn't a trick. Something was wrong, and I had two choices. Delete the file and finally be free of her ghost, or follow her breadcrumb trail and unlock a part of our past I was never meant to return to. I chose the second. I packed a bag, grabbed my car keys, and drove into the dark. The drive took 4 hours, mostly in silence. I didn't play music, didn't call anyone, didn't stop for gas until the tank was on empty and my hands were cramping from gripping the wheel too tight. The sky was already bruised with approaching storm clouds by the time I reached the narrow road that led into the woods. There were no signs, no GPS, just memory and the creeping sense that if I turned back now, I might get to pretend none of this ever happened. But I didn't turn back. I drove until the dirt turned to gravel and the trees started closing in like ribs around a heart. I saw the edge of the lake glinting through the branches, then the roofline, the cabin. It looked smaller than I remembered. The porch was still there, warped and soft with rot. One of the chairs we used to drink wine on was tipped on its side, covered in pine needles. The windows were streaked with grime, but intact. No lights, no car, just stillness. Heavy, watchful stillness. I parked behind the cabin where the gravel ends and the earth swallows everything. When I stepped out, the smell hit me. Wet leaves, sap, the faint iron tang of something animal, something dead somewhere nearby. I tried not to think about it. The front door was locked. That surprised me. I had half convinced myself that she'd be here, waiting, crying, maybe apologizing. I don't know what fantasy I had cooked up on the way. Some broken part of me still imagining a version of her that regretted what she'd done. But the locked door told me otherwise. This wasn't a meeting, it was a message. I used the old spare key. She didn't know I still had it. Inside, everything was coated in a fine layer of dust. Cobwebs in the corners, a half-burnt candle on the mantel, the same scratchy blanket folded on the couch. There was a bottle of whiskey on the kitchen counter, half full, with a faded post-it note on the label that read, "You always said this one tasted like tree bark. I missed that." I didn't smile. I didn't drink. I just stood there turning in slow circles trying to feel what she wanted me to feel. That's when I saw the door. It wasn't there the last time we came. At the far end of the hallway, past the bathroom, there was now a thin white door with a brass handle, completely out of place, too new. The paint wasn't even chipped. And something about it felt wrong, like it didn't belong to the cabin at all, like it had been added later, not by builders, but by someone who didn't want it to be found. There was no lock, just the handle. I stood there for a long time before touching it. My hand was trembling. When I finally turned the knob, the door swung inward with a creak that sounded far too loud for such a small cabin. The room behind it was completely dark. I fumbled for a light switch. Nothing. So I used the flashlight on my phone. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, All yellowed, some curled at the edges, taped and pinned and glued in chaotic layers. They were all about people, missing people, men, women, couples. Most from small towns I'd never heard of. Most dated within the last 10 years, but some were older, much older. One from 1994, another from 1976. And in the center of the wall, perfectly centered, was a photo of me and Lena from our wedding. Underneath it, written in black marker, "He never knew." My heart felt like it stopped. I staggered back, nearly knocking over a stack of boxes. That's when I saw the tape recorder, old analog, sitting on a stool in the corner, like it had been placed there for me. A note beside it read, "Play this last." What the hell did that mean? Was it hers? Was it Silas's? I didn't know, not yet, but I sat down, reached for the recorder, and pressed play. Nothing could have prepared me for the voice that came out of that speaker. It wasn't Lena, it wasn't Silas, it was someone else entirely, someone who knew my name. The tape clicked softly before starting, like it needed a moment to wake up. Then static, just the low hiss of dust and age. For a few seconds, I thought the damn thing was broken. Then came the voice, a man's voice, calm, deep, measured. Not Silas's, not someone I recognized. But this wasn't the voice of someone guessing. It was the voice of someone who already knew everything. "Jonah Clay," he said, like reading it off a list. My chest tightened immediately. Born April 19th, 1985, son of Mary Ann and Elias Clay, teacher, husband, and soon, if you keep listening, a man in very real danger. I froze. My thumb hovered over the stop button, but I couldn't press it. Something about his tone, so rehearsed, so cold, paralyzed me. I hadn't heard my full name spoken out loud since the courthouse during the divorce hearing. "I know you're sitting in the cabin. I know what you've just seen, and I know what you think you understand about Lena, about Silas, about the red box. But this isn't about them, not anymore." I looked around the room, expecting cameras, microphones, something, anything. The clippings on the walls seemed to lean closer, like they were listening with me. My own wedding photos stared back at me, framed by strangers who'd vanished into newspaper ink and forgotten cases. "You are not the first person to be lured here by someone you loved. That's the pattern. That's the point. It always starts the same. A lie, a fracture, a carefully timed message. Then the retreat to a familiar place, safe, isolated, easy to control." He paused, and I swear to God I heard him breathe. "You were chosen, Jonah, years ago." I stood up. My legs didn't want to cooperate. I stumbled back toward the door, hit my shoulder on the frame. The flashlight beam shook across the clippings like lightning through old memories. "There's something buried under the floorboards beneath the stove," the voice continued. "If you're still listening, I assume curiosity is stronger than fear. Or maybe you're just like the others, convinced you're smarter, different, immune." I wanted to stop, I did, but I didn't. I moved toward the kitchen, eyes darting around like a haunted thing. I slid the cast iron stove away from the wall. It screeched like it hadn't been moved in years. Dust and debris scattered. And then I saw it. A seam in the wood, subtle, unnoticeable unless you were looking. I pried it open with a rusted fire poker. And there, in the shallow space beneath the boards, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, was a shoebox. Inside, a set of Polaroids, a burner phone, and a driver's license. It was my photo, but the name wasn't mine. Isaac Tenner. The address was in Ohio. The birthday was off by 1 year, but the photo? It was me. Same haircut I had 3 years ago. Same shirt I remember losing on a trip to her mother's. What the hell? I whispered. The tape kept playing. You've already been erased once, Jonah. You just don't remember. You weren't meant to, but something went wrong. You slipped through the cracks, and now she's trying to fix it. Or maybe warn you. I was shaking visibly. I backed into the counter and dropped the tape recorder, but it didn't stop. It just kept playing. The voice flattening out now, like it had been recorded years ago and was running out of tape. If you value the life you think is yours, do not return to your apartment. Do not contact Lena again. Do not go back to the city. Take the envelope marked C from behind the breaker panel. Read it. Follow the instructions exactly. And then, she's not who you think she is. Click. Silence. The tape ended. I stood there in the kitchen for a long time, surrounded by dust, by Polaroids of people I didn't recognize, by evidence of a life I might have lived but never knew about. My mind refused to form a full thought. Who was I really? Who is she? And what the hell had I been dragged into? I turned slowly toward the breaker panel. There was indeed an envelope taped behind it labeled simply C. And inside was a bus ticket, one way to a town I had never heard of, and a set of coordinates. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. God knows I tried. I laid on the cabin's worn-down couch, staring at the beams of moonlight slicing through the dusty windows like pale knives. The envelope with the coordinates sat on my chest as if daring me to act. I kept thinking about the ID in that box. Isaac Tenner. My face with someone else's name. And the voice on that recording, so calm, so certain, as if he knew everything I'd do before I did it. I wasn't just rattled anymore. I felt split open, dislocated, like my memories had been unzipped and someone else's were crawling in. By morning, the fear had calcified into something worse. Obsession. I needed to know the truth. Not about Lena or Silas or even who was behind the recording. I needed to know about me, because if even a sliver of what that voice said was true, if my life had been tampered with, then I wasn't just a man recovering from betrayal. I was someone's experiment. The bus ticket was dated for that morning, 10:15 a.m., one way to a town called Briar Junction. Never heard of it. I checked Google Maps. Nothing. No station, no listings. I typed in the coordinates, expecting some remote village or burned-out stop in the middle of nowhere. But the coordinates landed dead in a blank patch of forest in upstate New York. No routes, no roads, just green, endless, untouched green. I don't know what possessed me to go. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that I had nothing left to lose. I packed the Polaroids, the burner phone, which had no service, no contacts, just a single unsent text draft that read, "He's on his way," and the envelope, and left the cabin behind without a second glance. At the station, I approached the teller with the torn ticket in my hand. I expected confusion, maybe a laugh, but the woman behind the glass just gave me a long, unreadable look. Then she slid a key across the counter. Small brass room number etched into the side. Storage locker, far end. 10 minutes early, she said, without ever asking my name. The locker contained an unmarked duffel bag. Inside, a change of clothes, a disposable phone charger, a flashlight, 3 protein bars, and a sealed manila folder. I didn't open it. Not yet. I was afraid of what I'd find. The bus itself was strange. Plain, unbranded. Just a long, metallic gray coach sitting idle, engine humming. Only 6 passengers, all silent, all with their heads tilted against the glass like they'd been riding for days. No one looked up when I got on. No one spoke. The driver didn't even check my ticket. I sat near the back, gripping the bag with white knuckles as the town faded behind us and the trees began swallowing the road. For 2 hours we drove. No stops, no signs, just winding blacktop and thickening fog, like the world was closing its eyes around us. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke up, the bus was parked, empty. We were in a clearing surrounded by tall, gray pines that looked older than time itself. The fog hung low and wet, hugging the ground like a second skin. The sun was gone. I checked the time, 2:03 p.m., and then I saw the sign. Rusted, hand-painted, Briar Junction, population blank. Just that, no number, no welcome, nothing else. I stepped off the bus. The air smelled strange, like ash and damp wood and something faintly metallic. The buildings were low, wooden, all mismatched, like they'd been moved here piece by piece. Some had boarded windows, others had no doors, but there were no people, no cars, just the soft creak of the trees swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. The bus hissed, and when I turned around, it was already pulling away. I was alone, or so I thought. I walked for what felt like an hour, the burner phone in my pocket buzzing every 15 minutes. Same number, no message, just a ping, like someone tracking distance, movement, or timing something. Eventually, I found the post office, if you could call it that. No signs, no flag, just a squat building with mail slots carved into the walls like mouths. I pushed the door open and a bell rang, a real physical bell hanging from a frayed string. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming from the back room. I didn't breathe. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering, and then a voice. This time, not from a recording, but real. Said Isaac. I froze. I hadn't said that name to anyone. No one in my life had ever called me that. But someone here just did. She stood in the doorway like she'd been waiting hours for that exact moment. Her silhouette framed by warm amber light from inside the post office. Her hands still on the doorframe as if anchoring herself between two realities. She was in her early 50s, maybe with long gray hair pulled into a braid, and tired, glassy eyes that didn't blink when she looked at me. Isaac, she said again, quieter this time, almost lovingly, as if saying the name out loud pained her. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The sound of that name on someone else's lips, out here in this impossible town that didn't exist on maps, felt like a punch to the lungs. My throat went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet stayed planted. Maybe because I needed her to keep talking. Maybe because I was still hoping this was all some elaborate mistake, a prank, a psychotic breakdown. But then she stepped aside and held the door open. "Come in," she said. "You're not safe out here." I followed, because of course I did. Inside, the building looked more like a bunker than a post office. The walls were lined with shelves of old radios, boxes of documents, faded ID cards, film reels, handwritten logs. Nothing was digital. Nothing was labeled. It was like stepping into a secret someone had been keeping for decades. "Sit," she said, motioning toward a wooden stool near the back. I sat. She didn't ask my name. She didn't have to. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out a thick black binder with my face on the cover. Not a photo, a sketch, but it was unmistakably me. Down to the scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike at 8. She placed it on the table between us, careful like it was fragile. "You were relocated 4 years ago," she said, flipping to the first page. "From Sector 12. Your primary identity was compromised after the Langford incident. Your reset cycle should have lasted at least 10 years, but something," she tapped the page, "malfunctioned. Your cognitive firewall began to collapse 2 months ago. Memory bleed. That's why you started dreaming in voices that weren't yours." "What are you talking about?" I whispered. My head was spinning. She looked up at me then, really looked, and something in her expression cracked. She reached out and placed a hand over mine. "I know none of this makes sense right now, but it will. You're not insane. You're not broken. You were part of a memory architecture trial run, Project Anchorite. They tested on people whose trauma made them vulnerable. You volunteered willingly. You just don't remember." "No," I said, shaking my head. No, I was a school teacher. I was married. I had Lena, she said gently. I went still. She was your handler? I stared at her, mouth open, but no words forming. My brain felt like it had dropped into ice water. No, no, you're wrong, I muttered. Lena was my wife. She was your implant, the woman said. They placed her to monitor your responses. She was never supposed to get attached, but she did. That's why she broke protocol and tried to warn you. That's why she sent you the email. She knew your firewall was degrading, and she wanted to help you escape before the sweep. I wanted to scream, to punch something, wake up. But instead, I asked the stupidest question I've ever said out loud. What sweep? The woman didn't answer. She stood and walked to the far wall, opened a locked cabinet, and pulled out an old map. Paper folded so many times it was nearly falling apart. She laid it out across the table. Dozens of red circles, X's, names crossed out. These are the Anchorite subjects who woke up too early. Most didn't make it out. The ones who did, she pointed to a column labeled Cull, they were eliminated or reabsorbed into new cycles. I found my name, Isaac Tenor. Status unconfirmed. Location, Briar Junction. What do they want with me? I asked, but my voice didn't even sound like mine anymore. Her eyes flicked to the window. The fog outside had thickened. They want you quiet, she said. They want the world to forget you existed. You were a broken asset, but now you're an anomaly. That makes you dangerous. Then she walked over to a locked chest, pulled out a revolver, and slid it across the table. You have one chance left to disappear on your own terms. I stared at the weapon like it might explode. I didn't come here to kill anyone, I said. I just want answers. She leaned in close, her breath shaking. Then you need to find Lena before they do. And before I could ask how, she was already unlocking the back door. There's a man in town who calls himself Wren, she said. He knows where she is, but if they find you talking to him, they'll burn this whole place down. The wind outside howled as she opened the door. Go now. And then she whispered, just before I left, your name was never Jonah. I didn't trust Wren at first. He lived in the basement of an old church just beyond the trees, past the last row of cabins where the fog refused to lift. The building looked abandoned, but the candlelight in the stained glass windows gave it away. He was waiting when I arrived, sitting alone at a table made from 2 nailed doors and surrounded by piles of film canisters and deconstructed typewriters. He looked like a man made of corners, sharp cheekbones, sharp voice, sharp eyes that never quite blinked. But when he saw me, he didn't look surprised, only tired. You're late, he said. How do you know me? I asked. He didn't answer immediately, just poured a cup of something steaming and pushed it across the table. She told me you'd come when it got too loud inside your head, he said. Lena, that's what she called you in the recordings. I sat slowly. My hand still rested on the revolver, though I wasn't sure I had it in me to use it. I don't want revenge, I told him. I just want to know who I really am. Wren stared at me for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer and slid over a cassette tape labeled Silo 7, Session 43, Isaac T. He said nothing while I played it. It was my voice, but not like I speak now. It was faster, lighter, almost eager. Yes, I understand the risks. I consent to the wipe. If it means I forget the pain, the grief, the collapse, then yes, I want to start over. I heard myself laugh on the tape. I want to live a life where I don't wake up wanting to disappear. Then another voice, deeper, official. Very well. Anchorite Phase 1 will initiate in 48 hours. Identity reassignment confirmed. From this point forward, your name is Jonah Clay. And the tape ended. I couldn't speak. My heart didn't break. It clicked like a puzzle piece had finally dropped into place. I had asked for this once long ago, in a life too painful to remember. I had chosen to forget. Lena hadn't tricked me. She had watched over me, protected me, and in the end, she had risked everything to give me a chance to wake up. "Where is she?" I asked. Ren smiled for the first time. He handed me a bus ticket. This one was real, stamped, marked. Destination, Alto Mayor, a small, quiet coastal town several states away. "I promised her I'd only send you if you remembered willingly," he said. "Not out of fear, not because you were hunted, but because you wanted your life back." "What if they come after me?" I asked. "They won't," he said. "You're not their problem anymore. They've already written you off." "What changed?" Ren leaned back in his chair. "You did." 3 days later, I stepped off a local bus and smelled salt in the air. Alto Mayor was nothing like the town I'd fled. No fog, no watchers, just sun-bleached rooftops, the sound of gulls, and people who smiled like they meant it. I found her at the edge of the boardwalk, painting the sea on a weather-warped canvas. She looked up before I said a word. For a moment, we just stared at each other, and then she smiled. "I hoped you'd remember." "I did," I said. Eventually, I sat beside her. No fireworks, no swelling music, just peace. And in that quiet, I understood something that no recording, no secret file, no memory implant could have taught me. My name didn't matter. My past didn't define me. What mattered was this moment.